What's going on, guys? Your boy Mayo Jones here, and we're here with a video. And this time we'll be doing our Week 18 reaction for this week. We're gonna get started here. So before I give you my Week 18 reaction and my thoughts on on all the topics, don't forget to put thumbs up at the video, subscribe my channel more option, and comment down your opinion below to see who you guys think. So about my topics and all that. So let's get started here. So I want to talk about the Panthers because the Panthers are back in the playoffs. You know, here's why. Now we understand Carolina have lost back-to-back games, but anyway, they made the playoffs for some reason. Here's why. Now, everybody in the division except for the Saints went 8-9 because the Falcons beat the Saints and the Buccaneers won, and somehow Carolina still clinched their division. And now they face the Rams. Now I like how the way Carolina, has been playing. I like how the way Carolina has been able to has been playing. Carolina has been playing good football recently. I like how the way Carolina, how the way they I like how the way Carolina has been playing as a team. So far, they've been having a lot of momentum, and Dave Canales, has been doing a really good job preparing, his players every week. Now I know Carolina doesn't have a lot of talent, but here's the thing. Now Carolina, they got a really good offensive line. They have a strong running game with Rico Dowell. Bryce Young's been a little bit up and down. They don't have a lot of weaponry other than Tenterrio McMillan. He's had a rookie season. He he had he's not a bad player. He only has this guy's been going off. He has over 1,000 receiving yards and 70 catches. And this guy is special. This guy looks to be a stud for the next future. They got Xavier Legette, good player, but he's had a down year so far. You know, the Panthers do got young receivers, but their receiving core is not really good. But their O line is good, and the defense so far has been up and down a little bit, but it has been great. I mean, they're doing a really good job, taking the football away and all that, playing good in coverage and all that. So far, their defense has been playing good for the most part, and so far the offense, it's been up and down, but it's not as good. But so far, Carolina, I'm pretty much sure they pretty much have a bright future ahead of them. So I kind of really think that Carolina, being back in the playoffs is good for them for the first time since 2017. So yeah, it's good for Carolina. Now I want to talk about the Vikings are insane and have a bright future ahead of them because so far the Vikings after losing to Seattle, they have won their last 5 games. They've won their last 5 games, after being eliminated they did. I don't even know when, but I feel like it was kind of yeah, so they've been on a 5 game win streak so far and won their last 5 games by being eliminated. And they found a way to finish the season off strong and turn around now. I like how the way the Vikings, have been playing better as a team. I feel like the Vikings offense is playing a lot better than people think, people are giving them credit for. And so far, the Vikings, their defense, it's been playing really good. Cause I like how the way the Vikings defense is playing. Like they've been playing lights out for weeks, not giving up so many explosive plays. Like Brian Flores has done a really good job stopping the pass. He's doing a really good job stopping the run for the most part. Like he's done it for weeks. Like he's really done a good job with that. So yeah. So basically, you were able to at least stop the run against Washington. You won that game 31-0. Then they played against the Cowboys, where they definitely won that game, you know, and they won that game, 34-26. Then they played against the Giants, where they totally won that game by 16-13, where your defense allowed 13 points. Then against the Lions, they allowed 10 points to them. Where the Vikings, their defense, allowed it, where their offense was not good and their defense won that game, by forcing a lot of turnovers. Then they won against the Packers, where their defense and offense was getting explosive. So yeah, Vikings do have a bright future ahead of them. I feel like Brian Flores, maybe he could be the guy next year for defense coordinator, but it could be news that he could be going somewhere else. But so far, the offense has been playing a little bit better than people give him credit for, but it's not really good enough. So far, their O-line is playing good, and so far, their defense is playing good. I mean, this team looks like they can, I feel like this Vikings team does have a bright future ahead of them, and they have proven they can beat some good teams. And they've proven they can find ways to win with their defense. So, yeah, so I like the Vikings so far. They have a bright future ahead of them, and J.J. McCarthy, I don't know if he's going to look to be the guy, but we'll probably see what happens. Now, I want to talk about the Browns because firing their coach. Because so far, the Browns fired Kevin Stefanski after, having back-to-back losing seasons. Now, the Browns so far, the reason why they fired Kevin Stefanski is because here's the thing. His offense is really not doing a really good job so far because he did not really do a good job offensively, with his team because so far the Browns offense at times have been struggling to get things going. Because here's the thing. Now, I understand they beat the Bengals, but at the same time, and we know Myles Garrett broke the sack record, but at the same time, the Browns so far, their offense has not been playing the way it should be. Because so far, we've seen the Browns offense, come up with some good moments. Sometimes they have bad moments. Because I just really think when I look at the Browns, because I just really think when you look at the Browns, the Browns so far have been very, very. They have been up and down recently, and Cleveland, at times, they have been very good for very many reasons. Like defensively, they were really good, especially they had like a top 10 defense in football. Because as you look at that, Jim Schwartz has been a really good defense coordinator for them. Because so far, the Browns, they were sixth in total defense, and they literally are third in rush defense and 16th in passing defense, and 14th in points allowed, and they're seventh on third down. And so far, the Browns' offense has been the worst. They are like bottom 30 in total offense. We're 31st in passing yards, 27 in rushing yards, 31st in points per drive. And they're 29th on third down, which means the offense has not been playing good so far, which they can't score points. And Kevin Stefanski's play calling has been an issue. Like, He has so many starting quarterbacks to start with. He decided to let Joe Flacco be QB1, but that wasn't the case right there. They only benched him because he was terrible. And all of a sudden, they bring in Kenny Pickett, but he didn't start, so they traded him away again to the Raiders. Then, when it got towards week 5, they started Dylan Gabriel. And Dylan Gabriel, he started for a couple of games. And after he went out for a concussion, they went with Shador. And Shador, he's had some good moments, though. But sometimes he has bad moments. Sometimes. So, yeah, and all of a sudden, Kevin Stefanski, he's giving some of these quarterbacks first team reps. That's what he was doing so far. Like the Browns do have a little talent around, but it hasn't been good enough though, because just because their offense, they cannot they could not do much. And so far their defense has been the problem so far. I just really think the Browns so far feel like they can have a bright future and they could look to be back in the playoffs in the next decade, but it feels like the reason why they fire him because of coaching on offense. I mean, the coaching on defense has been good for the most part, especially when they're at home. But when it's away, they're not really good. But at home, it is. But Kevin Stefanski has been the problem for this Browns offensive play calling because we know their play calling has not been good. So yeah. So basically that's the reason why they fired Kevin Stefanski. Now they're gonna be looking at a new head coach, and now Kevin Stefanski gonna look to coach somewhere else. But I don't know if that's the case. But we'll see what happens. Now I want to talk about the Falcons firing Raheem Morris and their GM because I just really think the reason why they fired Raheem Morris and their GM because here's the thing. Raheem Morris has had back-to-back losing seasons since becoming the head coach, and that's why they fired him. Now, the Falcons, he had Kirk Cousins as a starter last season until it came this season. He benched him for Michael Penix Jr. Now, Michael Penix Jr., he's been he's been a real thing, because he's not really good, and we know he hasn't been really good for the most part. Because we've seen moments that his offense, has been beat up offense, has not been good for the most part. But at the same time, the Falcons offense has been clicking all cylinders. And Zach Robinson, he has not been a good offensive coordinator for them, but he's had some good moments and his play calls been coming out there are really good. But so far, Raheem Morris has been a problem and the coaching's been a problem. And ownership has been a problem why they fired their GM. Now, we understand that, Zach Olbrich, he did a fantastic job with his defense, So far, he's done a really good job with the Falcons' defense because so far Atlanta's defense has been playing at their best ball so far towards the end of the season. Because they always pressure the quarterback. They stop the run, but they stop the pass really well. Atlanta has been really good so far in those areas, but at the same time, I just really look at their offense, and so far their offense so far has been clicking on all cylinders. Now they do have the talent players on offense, but they don't have the talent on defense enough because they do have some young players who are stepping up. And Jeff Ulbrich, he's a really good defensive coordinator, but at the same time, Atlanta's offense, has not been working so far. It's been the issue so far. It's been a play calling issue with Raheem Morris, and the problem is coaching. You seen last year against Washington Commanders. They went to overtime. They blew that game because of coaching and because of their defense. because they couldn't stop the run of Jaden Daniels because Jaden Daniels was going off. But guess what? When you played against Commanders this year, you won that game. You won that game as well without Jaden. And then when you look at it, you know why. And then when you look at Atlanta's defense, Atlanta's defense, it has been playing as its best so far. Like, they can make stops when they need to. Like, so far Atlanta has not had a good offseason. I mean, so far it's been between ownership as well. Is why the reason why they did fire both their GM and their head coach. So yeah. So yeah, and so far Atlanta, there's been a lot going on with this team so far because they have been on a losing streak, and somehow after getting eliminated, they've been finding ways to at least like close out and finish season strong by winning out. Because think about that, they lost to the Jets, and after that, they bounced back. And after they lost to Seattle, they bounced back and beat the Buccaneers 29-28, where they didn't blew that game. Their offense found a way to drive down the field and win the game. It was a good play called by Zach Robinson. Then they went out and beat the Cardinals, where their defense has 16 points allowed, I believe. Where they allowed 19 points allowed. Then against the Rams, you won that game 27-24, where you allowed 24 points allowed and you won that game by a field goal. And then week 7, within the final week, you end up beating the Saints 19-17, where your defense stepping up. So yeah, so far it's been a lot going on. The Falcons, so far have not been looking very good so far, and they've been the reason why they lost the games. So yeah. So I feel like the Falcons, they could have a bright future ahead of them as well, but now they're going to have to look for a new head coach right now and a new GM. Now I want to talk about the Lions upsetting the Bears because so far the Lions won that game 19-16. Now this was a little bit of a defensive game. Now the Lions offense so far, they have not been playing at their best so far because but their defense is playing better than people are giving them credit for. Like, here's the thing: their defense, they're playing better. Even despite elimination, their defense has been playing a little bit better than people give them credit for. But their offense can't produce. It's like their offense, at times they have been struggling to get things going. But I feel like against the Bears, they did a little bit better. Not turn the football over a lot. Their offense was like playing a lot better. With the screen plays, with the quick throws and all that. And John Morton, he did a really good job with the offensive play calling a little bit. Dan Campbell did as well. Like he did a really good job preparing, the Lions for that, and especially Calvin Shepard with his defense, he did a really good job with the Bears. Lions did a really good job confusing the Bears offense because so far Caleb Williams, he kind of had a good game, and all of a sudden like that, like the Bears kind of really got something going that game until they blew that comeback to the Lions, where the Lions kicked the field goal for the win. Like once they had the ball back, the offense got it going here. Like guys were getting open, guys were separated. Amon Ra had a better game. Jameson Williams stepped up. Like the run game has not been. The run game has not been like it's been good, but it has taken a step back. And so far, the defense, it's been a little bit up and down, but so far, it's been taking a step back so far because so far their defense like has not been great. Like their offense so far has declined, taking converting on third down a lot, but so far, Lions offense has produced. And the Bears, so far, the offense did not have a good performance in the first half until the second half. They started to get things going and making a comeback, but the Bears defense blew it. You might as well give the Lions credit. Like, the Lions did a really good job, The Lions did a really good job so far, on defense, giving them 16 points. Offense kind of did a really good job at the end, closing it out. Good play called by Dan Campbell and John Morton. So, yeah. And so far, the Lions, I know they don't get in the playoffs this year because they're already eliminated, but I feel like next year, things will get better for them. I feel like they need to at least get better in the offseason. They might need to at least, some of their offensive linemen are getting old. They probably need to at least fix their offensive line. They probably need to at least fill in the defensive holes. Like, I feel like this team does have a bright future ahead of them. I feel like they just need to stay healthy. And the longer they stay healthy, I feel like this team will kill it next year. And as long as you don't move off of your players, you'll be fine. So, yeah, so I feel like the Lions so far, it was a way to go to finish the season off strong with a bounce back win. I didn't really expect it to happen, but they came in ready to play. Now, I want to talk about the Raiders firing Pete Carroll because so far Pete Carroll is no longer going to be the head coach of the Raiders next year. Now, here's the reason why they fired Pete Carroll, because here's the thing. Now, because so far Pete Carroll, the Raiders so far have went 3-14 on the season, and so far they will be getting the first pick in the NFL draft. And so far, the Raiders so far, they only fire their head coach because here's the thing. Because they have been on a losing streak for so long and they have not won for 2 months. That's why. And the Raiders have been finding ways to lose. Now, here's why. Now, so far, their offense has been the worst in football. Like, they're 32nd in total offense. They're 28th in passing. They're 32nd in rushing offense. 32nd in points allowed. 28th on third down. Like, their offense so far has been a disaster all season because they have struggled to put points up on the board. Like, trust me, though. Like, offensively, they have not been great for the most part. And defensively, they have been a little bit up and down. Like, they are average. Like, they've been great against the pass and the run lately, but they have been bad on third down and points allowed. Like, the Raiders' defense has not been playing at their best so far. And Geno Smith has not been playing good. Because I've been saying about the Raiders, like, their offense not good enough. Like, trust me, like, they don't have enough talent. Yeah, you got to Max Crosby, but they just don't have enough, though. And all of a sudden, the Raiders have, a decent offense. Like, their offense so far only has a few weapons because they traded Jacoby Brissett, during trade deadline. Because now you got Brock Bowers and Ashton Gentis. Like, they don't really have a lot of explosive weapons enough on offense because their guys can't step up. Guys can't, because outside Brock Bowers is not good because all of a sudden their receivers can't catch. They can't separate other than Brock Bowers. And the old line has not been good lately. Like, they can't block a soul. And their defense, they're good at getting pressure. They can stop the run a little bit. But at times, they're terrible against the pass, where they're blowing coverages. Like, they like to play a lot of man and a lot of zone coverage, especially soft. And Chip Kelly, has not been a really good offensive coordinator for them though. And that's why they got rid of him. And Pete Carroll only got fired for a reason, because his team is not willing to win games like he should be. And that's been the problem with the Raiders so far. He has Geno Smith, but at the same time, his quarterback has not been playing good. And somehow Kenny Pickett, they put in, he's not been playing good. But all of a sudden, they still end up ending that losing streak and bounce back with a win against the Chiefs, where their defense finally did step up in this game. But their offense cannot produce. Where they did win that game 14-12 by a low scoring game. Because we already know the Chiefs, with the Mahomes Chiefs, the offense, they can't score points without Mahomes. But the Raiders defense was able to do their thing. So, and somehow Pete Carroll, he did get fired. Like, it's been a lot going on and all that with the Raiders. So yeah. So the coaching has been a problem with the Raiders. And I feel like that's exactly why, the Raiders had decided, to get rid of him. That I feel like that's the reason why. I feel like there's nothing else, coaching has been a problem with the Raiders. Chip Kelly is no longer there, no longer Pete Carroll. Now they're going to be looking for a new head coach who can really change his franchise. Now, I want to talk about the Cardinals firing Jonathan Gannon, because this is simple, because the Cardinals did fire their head coach yesterday. And here's the reason why they fired him, because here's the thing. Now, the Cardinals, their defense so far, Jonathan Gannon has not did a really good job so far in terms of, adding players in the offseason. But he did a really good job, with having a good offseason with some good players. But at the same time, he has not been. He has not been. He has not been great lately. Because he has been terrible lately. He has not been good as a coach, especially on defense. He has not been great as a defensive coach. But at the same time, he did not have a good offseason so far. Even despite adding Josh Sweat and Calais Campbell, he has not been doing good so far. But so far, the Cardinals offense, has been the problem so far. He had Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback at least for the rest of the season, because Kyler Murray was not healthy enough. Now there's rumors saying that, they're gonna might move on from Kyler Murray, which that could be the case, but I can see it happening. But at the same time, firing Jonathan Gannon was pretty much a great decision by Jonathan Gannon. I feel like it was. And don't get me wrong, it probably was, but yeah. So yeah, and so far, the Cardinals, their coaching has been an issue. Is why they're on a losing streak right now. Because they went 3-14 on the season. Because trust me, after starting 2-0, they just start to be on a losing streak until they played against the Cowboys. They won that game by double digits, and then they start to lose out the rest of the season afterwards. I'm saying this Cardinals team has not been performing at their best, and this team feel like they're really not good enough as well. This team looking like they're in a step of declining, because that's the reason why they have they have been losing these games because now the Cardinals, if you look at, say if like, because, they haven't won the division since 2015 and have not made the playoffs since 2021. Because the Cardinals, they seem like they looking like a team where they're not looking close to making the playoffs, Like they look like a team that's not coming close to the playoffs. They're looking like a French playoff team in my opinion. So, yeah, because this team was so far among the worst teams in football is the reason why they fired Jonathan Gann because of coaching, because the coaching has not been great for them. So, yeah, I feel like that's the reason why they must have fired this guy. Because I believe he did not have enough talent enough. Because his defense has been good for the most point, but at times his defense has not been great. So yeah, and that's pretty much why the Cardinals have not been having a great season so far. So yeah. Now I want to talk about the Cowboys firing Matt Eberflus because so far the Cowboys have finally moved on from Eberflus. Now here's why. Now so far, I want to talk about the reason why they let him go. Because so far, Matt Eberflus has not been a really good defensive coordinator for this organization. Like he is finally, like he's not though. Now here's pretty much why they fired him. And the reason why they fired him because, he's been the biggest problem for this Cowboys defense. Because what he was doing, like his defense cannot really find answers though. Like he was playing soft zone coverage and he basically could not stop the run. And so far, the Cowboys defense has been terrible all year. Like, and everybody could probably say it could be the offense, and Dak Prescott, but no. Dak's really not the problem, though. It's probably this defense because so far, you know, the defense, it was not really good. Like, it was terrible. Like, they pretty much had, like, the worst defense ever seen in football. Like, they were 31st, they were 30th in total defense, and they were 32nd in passing defense, which is the worst, and 23rd in run defense. And so far, the Cowboys defense, it's been declining so far. Because they are like the worst defensive unit. And they're 32nd in points allowed. And so far their defense is averaging over 400 points. And on third down, they're very bad. And I've been saying about their defense, like ever since they made the Quentin Williams addition, I thought their run defense would get a little bit better. But so far, the passing defense has been the issue. And their defense has not been playing the way it should be because they have been bad on both areas, though run defense and pass defense. And they're giving up so many points a game. Like, think about that week one matchup against the Eagles. So far, your game, you allowed 24 points allowed in that game, and your defense was able to step up in that game, which that's pretty good. But somehow it didn't matter. They lost that game. They lost that game by their offense, and they allowed 302 total offense to the Eagles allow. Like they allow 158 rushing yards, 144 passing yards, which you almost could have won that game. Against the Giants, they beat them 40-37. Still, the defense couldn't get stops. They couldn't stop the pass. They couldn't get pressure on Russell Wilson, but they sacked him 3 times. And so far, he had 450 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And so far, they outgained them by 506 total yards to 478. And so far, they'll throw in the ball more than just run the ball. And they stopped the run in that game, knowing the Giants have a run game. Then week 3 against Chicago Bears, they lost that game 31-14, where the Bears, Caleb Williams had 298 passing yards, so 4 touchdowns, no picks. And all of a sudden, they was able to stop the run that game, and somehow you couldn't stop the pass. And they allowed 385 total yards allowed in that game, and they had no sacks in that game, and they couldn't get to Caleb. Like, they couldn't put pressure on him. And Dak had 2 interceptions in that game. Then he got benched and had 1 passing touchdown. Then against the Packers, they tie that game. They tie that game, and all of a sudden, they allow 40 points in that game, where Jordan Love had 337 passing yards, so 3 touchdowns, no picks. Green Bay had 164 rushing yards, and they allowed 489 total yards of offense. And so far, they only had 1 sack in that game as well. But Dallas could have at least won that game by their defense getting a stop. And then against the Jets, their defense did play better in that game, but somehow they allowed over 200 passing yards to Justin Fields. And all of a sudden, Dallas, they was able to run the football really well. And they allowed, 378 total yards of offense. Dallas allowed 5 sacks in that game. Then against the Carolina Panthers, they lost that game 30-27, where, Rico Dowdle, where they couldn't stop the run that game, where Rico Dowdle went off, and they allowed 410 total yards of offense in that game. So, yeah. Against Commanders, they did bounce back with a win. They did play better, and their defense, has stepped up, in that game, having 409 total yards of offense, had 4 sacks in that game. And they won that game by double digits, 44-22. Then against the Broncos, that's where their offense kind of struggled a little bit. And, they lost that game 44-24, where they allowed 4 passing touchdowns to Bo Nix and had 247 passing yards and 179 rushing yards and 426 of offense. Where their defense did struggle in that game, where their defense, they couldn't get a sack, where they couldn't get to Bo Nix. Then they lost to the Cardinals by double digits, where, again, they allowed 27 points allowed in that game, and they had the offense kind of struggled to get things going, and, they did have 5 sacks, but somehow the Cowboys couldn't keep up. And then they had the bye week. They played against the Raiders. They won that game 33-16, where their defense played really well in that game, having 381 total yards of offense, having 4 sacks in that game, which that's pretty good. Then against the Eagles, they won that game. At least they won that. They have 473 total yards of offense, and they won that game 24-21. They won by a field goal in that game. Then against the Chiefs, they won that game 31-28, where, the Cowboys had 457 total yards of offense, and they had 3 sacks in that game, which that's pretty good. Then against the Lions, they lost that game 44-30, and totally, the Cowboys, Dak had 2 picks in this game. The offense did score 30, but their defense couldn't get a stop enough. 30 could have been enough to win, but at the same time, your defense couldn't step up. And they allowed 408 total yards of offense. And Lions had 5 sacks. Dallas had 1 sack. And then against the Vikings, they lost that game 34-26. And so far, they had 23 total yards of offense. And they did outgame, but somehow they lost. And J.J. McCarthy had one of the best games of his career, had 250 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and all that. So, yeah. And then against the Chargers, they lost that game 34-17, where they allowed 300 total yards of passing, 2 touchdowns, and they had 452 total yards of offense and all that. So yeah, and they lost that game as well. And then against Commanders, they won that game 30-23 as well, where Dak had 2 passing touchdowns, 307 yards. They had over 200 rushing yards, 480 total yards of offense, and 2 sacks in that game. And Dak got Prescott sacked 6 times. Somehow they still won by 1 score. And then against the Giants, the Giants they lost that game 34-17, where they allowed 30 points again, where 161 total yards of rushing, 219 passing yards, 380 total yards. And Dallas allowed 4 sacks in that game. Somehow they still lost. And the Giants, they won that game by a lot, where the Cowboys offense did struggle to get things going until they benched their starters. So yeah. So the Cowboys did finish the season off 7-9-1, and we know it was too late to make changes, and we know they weren't making the playoffs. And Matt Eberflus has been a problem for this defense so far. Like, he's been the main reason why they have been losing games, because his defense is not able to, because Cowboys defense cannot get stops when they need to. Because I've been saying about the Cowboys, because their defense needs to get stops when they need to, and they haven't been able to do it. And the reason why they just give up too many big plays, because they're tired, because they be out the majority of the game. Because especially without Micah Parsons, their defense has not been the same. And ever since Quentin Williams is there, it did work, but at the same time, it didn't really matter. The defense still struggle to get stops when they need to. But in some games, when they play against bad offenses, their defense gets stops. But when they play against teams who has a really good offense, that's when their defense starts to get pushed around. Because look, they got pushed around by the Giants in that last game, where they allowed 30-plus points again to them. And they lost that game by a lot, though, when the Cowboys had to start their backups. Like I've been saying, Matt Eberflus has been a problem for this defense, because he has not been able to find answers. Because so far, after week 13 against the Chiefs, they lost to the Lions and gave up so many points again, where their defense, they couldn't get to Jared Goff. Because Jared Goff and his Lions offense, they were just being creative. And John Moore did a really good job so far with that offense. And Dan Campbell did a really good job, straightening the Cowboys defense and giving the Cowboys defense a tough time. And they couldn't get to Jared Goff, because, like I said, Dallas could have won this game if they want to. But at the same time, like I said about that, you couldn't get pressure on Jared Goff. You couldn't contain the passing game. You couldn't contain the run game. Because I've been saying, Matt Eberflus, the reason why that they fired Matt Eberflus, because the coaching has been a problem. He has not done a really good job with his defense. And his defense is not able to find answers. Because I've been saying, like, even when he added Quentin Williams, the defensive scheme was really good for a few weeks, until when they got towards week 14, when it got towards like week 13 or 14, the defensive scheme did not work in that game. Like, they couldn't find a way to get after, where he cannot get pressure, he cannot stop the run, he cannot stop the pass, and we know he's been the biggest problem for this Cowboys organization, and that's why they fired him. I feel like the Cowboys do need to find a new defensive coordinator. I feel like they can probably help the Cowboys turn their season around to make the playoffs next year, because this year was a wasted season for Dallas. Like it was, though, because they had their playoff chances alive throughout the past couple of weeks until they start falling off. They had 1% chance to make the playoffs and to win division. So that's pretty much why the Cowboys fire their coaches. Now, last topic, I want to talk about the Baltimore Ravens, because so far the Ravens are done. Because we already know, after, whoever wins the AFC, who wins that game wins the AFC North. The Ravens, so far, we already know their season's over. And so far they went 8-9 in the season. So far, the Ravens are done because here's the thing. The Ravens, it's been a wasted season for them because so far, now they get swept by the Steelers once again. Because they lost that game 26-24. Where here's the thing. The coaching has been a problem for the Ravens all year. And so far, the kicker, their kicker, Tyler Loop, he missed a wide open field goal for them, which that allowed the Steelers to win the game. So far, the defense has been a problem all year. And I've been saying this for a couple of weeks about the Ravens defense. Because so far, the Ravens, their offense so far has been a little bit underwhelming. Like they're 13th in total offense right now. They're 27 in passing, second in rushing, 11 in points allowed, 13 in points per drive. Like their offense has been a little bit up and down, but it's been pretty good for the most part. And so far, their defense so far has not been good, but they've been good against the run, but they have not been great against the pass lately. But their defense is bottom 20 in the league because they allow so many points a game. Look at that game against the Steelers and that last game against the Steelers, especially in that first match against the Steelers. They couldn't get to Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers had all the time. He was sitting back there finding guys wide open, like guys were making plays. And all of a sudden, you lost that game 27-22. And now this time, you were up 10-0, and all of a sudden, 10-3 at halftime, you let the Steelers jump up on them. But at the same time, your offense cannot step up. And so far, we've seen that the defense did its thing, against the Ravens. Like, we seen TJ Watt made a play, but at the same time, at the same time, when I look at this Steelers team, they have been on a roller coaster so far. When they look at the Ravens, they have been on a roller coaster so far. Because they were on a win streak until like week 13. They lost to the Bengals by a lot of points, by 32-14, where the Bengals defense was able to do their thing. Where they had a lot of turnovers, though. And then that second matchup against the Bengals, they did do better, and they won that game 24-0. But at the same time, against the Patriots, they lost that game 28-24, where, the Ravens, Zay Flowers did fumble at the end, where that allowed the Patriots to win the game. And then when they play, like I said, let's look back at week 1. Against the Bills, they scored 40 points in that game, and somehow you lost that game 41-40. It was the defense, but Derrick Henry had a fumble. But at the same time, when you look at the defense so far, the Ravens has been terrible all year. Like, they allowed 41 points allowed in that game, and they lost that game. Now, week 2 against the Browns, you could have won that game, and which you should, though, against the Browns, because they don't have a good offense, though, but they won that game 41-17. And then against the Lions, they allowed 38 points in that game. They lost the game 38-30, where they should have won that game, but at the same time, the Lions ran down your throat. Then against Kansas City Chiefs, they lost that game 37-20, where the Ravens, offense did kind of struggle a little bit, and the defense and Lamar Jackson went down. They put in Cooper Rush. Like, he's not a good backup. Like, he looked terrible against the Texans and the Rams. And they should have put Snoop Huntley in it. And then when they put Snoop Huntley in there, they beat the Bears, 30-16. And then against the Dolphins, when Lamar came back, they won that game 28-6. Against the Vikings, they won that game 27-19. Then against the Browns, they won that game 23-16. Against the Jets, they won that game 24-10. Like, this is like they've been on a win streak so far to keep their playoff hopes alive until they got towards the Bengals game. They lost that game 32-14, and they lost that game against the Steelers 27-22. I've been saying those are some games they should have at least won. But at the same time, the offense got to play better. I mean, Ty Monken, he's a really good offensive coordinator, and he's trying to say we're going to run the football more, and which he did. But at the same time, the defense, it's been a coaching problem. I mean, especially it comes through Coach Harbaugh and comes through defense coordinator Zachary Orr. Zachary Orr has not been a really good defense coordinator for the most part. The only reason why John Harbaugh hired him because he was the linebackers coach for the Baltimore Ravens. But now the coaching has not been working for Baltimore because so far, Zachary Orr has not been a really good defense coordinator for this team. And Mike Macdonald should have been at least a head coach, for this team because he's a good defensive mind, but now he's in Seattle. If he was with this team would be totally good, and they would have been a really great defense. But at the same time, it's not working because the Ravens, they do have some talented players like Marlon Humphrey. He looks like he's not the same player he used to be. He gets injured sometimes. Kyle Hamilton's one of the best safeties in football. They added Gilman. He's a really good player. He's really good in coverage. Malachi Starks is a really good player as well. Nate Wiggins, he's a really good cornerback. Um, their linebacking core has been concerning, but Roquan Smith has been excellent. Their pass rushing has been overwhelming a little bit. So yeah, so that's something you got to see. Like it's been overwhelming a little bit, and it's not been great. So yeah, like so far it's been a roller coaster for this Ravens team. Like the offensive line so far is okay, but it has been playing good. Most of their guards, like they have not been playing their best, and they do have a great running game in Derrick Henry. He's still one of the best running backs in football. But most of their players, like DeAndre Hopkins, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely's a really good tight end. Zay Flowers a really good receiver. He had 2 passing touchdowns and went for over 100 receiving yards in that game. Bateman's a really good player as well. So yeah. So far, And so far, this is why this Ravens team is done. And I feel like the problem is coaching. Maybe Lamar Jackson. He has not been playing at his best, but he has some good moments at the time. Now, there's some rumors saying they could totally move on from him because of the contract talks. He could have one more year in his deal. Maybe that could be the case. I don't know. We'll probably see what happens. But at the same time, the Ravens so far, it has been a roller coaster for the season. It's been a down year for this season that they took a step back this year. It's been a roller coaster for them. Like I hate to say this, I don't know why, but it has been. And this is why this team is so done. Like you could argue saying the Ravens could have at least just like the Ravens could have at least just had a chance to make the playoffs, but at the same time, it has been the case this season. Like the Ravens so far, they have been they haven't built on top. Like they have all this talent, but it all came down to coaching, and that's been the problem. Is coaching. Like the Ravens, they could probably move off from John Harbaugh and look for a different coach. They might look for a defensive mind. Maybe they could look Todd Monken. I would keep him long term because he's a really good offense coordinator. So that's what I would do. So yeah, so basically it's been a wasted season for Baltimore. I feel like Baltimore could have a bright future for them for the next couple of years, but I would not move on for Lamar. I would get rid of John Harbaugh and get a defensive coach. I would get rid of Zachary Orr as well. So coaching's been a problem for the Ravens this year. So yeah, so that's all I gotta say about the Ravens that they're finished. Hoping they make it back next year. So yeah. Well, those are all my Week 18 reactions for this week. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget, if you disagree with me, just let me know in the comments below what you guys think of my reactions and all that. So yeah, it's Manuel Jones, big fan. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later. Peace.